Hello, and welcome to one of the best reading months I have ever experienced. I'm coming at you after working Black Friday and the 2 days after in retail. So, excuse the depression shirt with extra holes from Maisie stabbing her claws in as she clumsily walks over wearing her cone because she cut her ear and it's currently healing. So, and she won't stop fidgeting with it. So we had to put this on. Nevertheless, yes. So I have seen more people than I ever wanted to. So I'm going to use this time to decompress and talk about the incredible books I've read this month. We definitely start in the highest place. The first two books I read this month were both 5-star. So if you do enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. The other links in terms of Patreon stuff are in the description as always. But the first book I read was Toll the Hounds by Stephen Erikson, book 8 in Malazan Book of the Fallen. A thunder punch of a book. I love Malazan. I know that anyone watching this is like, can you shut the fuck up? Because I have slowly read Malazan over the last 3 years. And if you've been around for those 3 years, then periodically you've just continuously heard me talk about how much I love this series. And probably can't wait for me to get the last 2 books done, just so it can be finished. It's just impeccable. Book 8 revisits things that were put down in book 1 and have not been picked up since. And the series is so iconic, things are so iconic that I knew them. I haven't read the book for 3 years. I struggle to remember sometimes the plot of the books that I have read this month. I remember things from 3 years ago in Malazan vividly, and Toll the Hounds picks up all of those pieces and elaborates and explores characters and a feeling in such a way that is very, I hesitate to say very different than the rest of Malazan, because I was expecting things to be more different based on the way that I'd heard people talk about it. This is unlike any other Malazan book. A lot of hyperbolic sayings that made me expect something more noticeably different. And instead, it's more of a kind of feeling, this sense of foreboding and moroseness, this feeling that things are never going to be the same again, and focusing on smaller characters who are just trying to live, and the consequences of things that have happened up until this point, and people living with the consequences of what they've done, which is an incredible thing to do and a necessary thing to do in a military series like this, is explore the aftermath, explore the pain caused by conflict, etc. And it's an incredibly slow-paced book that I absolutely adored because of how slow-paced it was. This was one I read a chapter a day and just absolutely bathed myself in Stephen Erikson's world and Esselmont's world. I loved it. Toll the Hounds has one of the most iconic endings in fantasy I've read. It is spellbinding. I was riveted throughout the entirety of the ending. One of the biggest things in the series happens. Like, it's balls to the wall nuts going on. Like, things are happening. And the best thing was, I could comprehend it. I really had to stop and think for a little bit and be like, wait, what does this mean? Wait, why is this happening? How is this happening? Where are we? What's going on? But when those things clicked, it was a smooth experience. Whereas a lot in Malazan, you read it and you go, I'm going to understand that in 4 books' time. This I was reading and being like, oh, I can understand the context clues we're being given to actually understand the set piece in real time. It was quite the experience. The one complaint I have with this book, because I do believe that it is on thematic purpose and it does pay off, However, the payoff is small enough in the grand scheme of the book that otherwise it doesn't quite balance what we went through to get to it. And that is that sexual assault and rape and things are consistently mentioned and explored throughout Malazan. Toll the Hounds has the most careless usage of threatening behavior, comments, jokes. It simultaneously, it doesn't belittle, but it is playful with the concept, which is a horrendous thing to read. It's repulsive. Throughout it, I was just off put by the characters and what they were saying. And like I said, things like that are throughout Malazan, but not to the concentration that they are here. Like I said, I do think it comes around where there is a genuinely horrid scene, and it almost says to the audience, this is the reality. Everything else before, this is why it's a problem. When you deal with things like this with humour or belittlement, this is the true horror that is happening. And I took that from it. However, it does not change that is throughout the book and is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, understandably. That is my big critique of the book, and it is the thing I can see the most people definitely having a problem with. And anyone who did say that to me, I would more than understand, because it's a disquieting experience. It is a subtextual and overture kind of to the entire book. It provides this sour flavour to the entire reading experience. That, like I said, for me personally, resolved in a way where I can take what I think the message is from it. However, it is not signposted in a way where if you don't think about it that way, it's just going to be this disgusting element. To say that, I gave Toll the Hounds 5 stars. I think all of Malazan, looking back on it, like things I've rated 4.5, now with the full context of where I am in the series, all of these books are 5 stars. They are all incredible pieces of fantasy fiction, and just pieces of fiction. So, moving on from there, the Discord book club read this month of November was Exhalation by Ted Chiang, a book I have read before and was looking forward to rereading. It was mentioned by Esme in my top science fiction books that she was due a reread, and I was thinking, by golly gosh, so am I. So I think I may have even said it as well. Who knows? Past me knows more than current me, probably. But current me has read the book twice, so who knows more? One of my favourite short story collections of all time. It is just this wonderful scope of science fiction ideas explored very much around the people. It is, depending on the story, character focused or science focused. It varies depending on the story, what is required of the story being told. One thing I love about Ted Chiang's writing is that he shifts depending on the type of story he's telling. So he can be extremely personal and kind of casual in his prose, and then he can also flip that into technical jargon and quite scientific explorations of these ideas. It varies depending on the story, the style of story. We've got a fable being told, we've got like a manual-esque thing, we've got incorporation of multimedia, of email chains and that kind of thing. And it's all going towards this wonderful collection of short stories. Exhalation is a masterpiece in my opinion. It's emotional. There are emotional elements to the stories. There's fun moments, comedy, heartbreak. It's a full rounded experience. I know not everyone in the Discord had the same experience. A lot of people found it very mid or didn't quite connect. So understand that this is my personal opinion and I'm glazing it a lot. But reread, 5 stars for me again. I gave it 5 stars the first time. Highlights in the collection for me are The Merchant and the Alchemist's Gate, What's Expected of Us, The Life Cycle of Software Objects, The Truth of Fact, The Truth of Feeling, Omphalos, and Anxiety is the Dizziness of Freedom. They're my highlights. A lot of them. The other ones are still great, but they're not my favourites. To go from there, we go to the lowest rated book of the month, which I could title this fucking video in a way that would trigger everyone and think I hated the book. But the lowest rated read of the book, the lowest rated book of the month was Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. A book that when I finished, it's not in there by the way. Grace is reading it currently, so it's just the cover. But when I read it the first time, I gave it 4.5 stars. When I finished it the second time, I gave it 4 stars. And after talking to Grace, so you could blame Grace for this, after talking to Grace and her thoughts so far, I realised that the book is a 3.5 for me. Because people rate these books consistently 5 stars, I have to explain why I'm not rating it 5 stars rather than why I'm rating it a good rating, which is why you tend to get a more negative aspect, even though I am rating the book well. Like, if you get the reasoning, rather than, like, I feel like a lot of the times with 5 stars, you explain everything you love to get it to 5 stars. Whereas with something like this, you have to essentially explain why it isn't 5 stars, you have to go down. All this is to say, the reason I did not rate this book 5 stars is personally I think that Rhythm of War is the first book in the Stormlight Archive that does not justify its length at all. 100% does not justify it. It's I found myself reading a few pages at the time and thinking this could have been a couple of paragraphs. It is the real beginning of Sanderson in this. Like, this book is Sanderson's editor not quite going for him in the way he should. I've begun Wind and Truth. I've been reading 2 chapters a day in preparation for the book coming out. And there are sentences in there where I'm just like, this doesn't look like it's been fucking looked at all. I'm still enjoying the beginning, but it is a problem, is that you've got this clunky way of phrasing things that is... It was at the beginning of Sanderson, it went away, and it has been reintroduced. So what I'm saying is, this book does not justify its length personally. I think it could easily be probably a 900-page book and have the exact same detail, just without this endless repetition and knocking everyone on the head to get you there. I'm going to say that because I don't even want to mention character names, of course, because it's the 4th book in a series, you don't want to know who's around. I enjoyed the storylines for a lot of the main characters, actually, and the star of the show in Rhythm of War, for those who have read it, continues to carry the book. 100% carries the book. Incredible character work. Love the dynamic of them and the central villain of this book, even though I have a slight problem with a little bit with that anyway. Mainly, I will say that I found the book losing me. There's a message in Discord where about 40 chapters in or something, 50 chapters, I was like, oh, I can feel the book losing me right now. It really needs to pick up. And there's a couple of things, it's like I said, there are things that I noticed on this read where I'm like, it does not make logical sense for this character to think this. It's purely happening because the book needs to stretch for the reason of Stormlight Archive has to be a certain length, apparently. Yes, I gave it 3.5 stars. I love the central character still, that the person who carries the book. I loved a lot of the storylines, and the ending does bang in this book. The ending is hot take. I prefer the ending of Rhythm of War to Oathbringer. That's gonna have a good comment section. That is my humble opinion. I love 80% of Oathbringer more than Rhythm of War, and I love 20% of Rhythm of War more than Oathbringer. If you can hear, Maisie is now scratching at her Third book of the month is the continuation of reading Virginia Woolf's work. And I had the video come up of reading the first four, and the first one of the second part, which is the fifth book, is To the Lighthouse. A wonderful little book. Really enjoyed it. Gave it 4.25 stars. It's not quite up to the level of Mrs. Dalloway. It's more of a Night and Day. It's the same level as Night and Day, despite being very different books. To the Lighthouse is about a family, the Ramseys, and they are waiting to, they're waiting for the weather to clear to transfer over to this lighthouse and stock up and all that kind of jazz there. And it is told in this stream of consciousness variety, moving on from Mrs. Dalloway, keeping it around, and she essentially explores this family who are thinking about how they fit together, regretting things, loving things about each other, being confused, their societal place, all the hallmarks of a Virginia Woolf novel. And I have to admit, I was really enjoying part one, and then part two is one of, if not the greatest piece of writing by Virginia Woolf I've read to date, which is this, it's this part called Time Passes. And it is how we go from the first 120 pages or so, which is this incident, this one time in their life, this essential like a day, as they're waiting to cross, and all of the things that happen. And then Time Passes is this experimental element of transition. We have like 20 pages, which is just this description of time passing, people dying, the place where they were living being left to decrepitude, all of this stuff happening and told in the most wonderful prose, this evocative, incredible prose. So I'm just going to read you to give you an idea of what the writing is like in this section. So it says, but what after all is one night? A short space, especially when the darkness dims so soon, and so soon a bird sings, a cock crows, or a faint green quickens, like a turning leaf in the hollow of a wave. Night, however, succeeds to night. The winter holds a pack of them in store and deals them equally, evenly, with indefatigable fingers. They lengthen, they darken. Some of them hold aloft clear planets, plates of brightness. The autumn trees, ravaged as they are, take on the flash of tattered flags kindling in the gloom of cool cathedral caves, where gold letters on marble pages describe death in battle, and how bones bleach and burn away in Indian sands. The autumn trees gleam in the yellow moonlight, in the light of the harvest moons, the light which mellows the energy of labour and smooths the stubble and brings the wave lapping blue to the shore. It seemed now as if, touched by human penitence and all its toil, divine goodness had parted the curtain and displayed behind it, single, distinct, the hair erect, the wave falling, the boat rocking, which, did we deserve them, should be ours always. But alas, divine goodness, twitching the cord, draws the curtain. It does not please him. He covers his treasures in a drench of hail, and so breaks them, so confuses them, that it seems impossible that their calm should ever return, or that we should ever compose from their fragments a perfect whole, or read in the littered pieces of clear words of truth. For our penitence deserves a glimpse only, our toil respite only. The nights now are full of wind and destruction. The trees plunge and bend, and their leaves fly helter-skelter until the lawn is plastered with them, and they lie packed in gutters and choke rain pipes and scatter damp paths. Also, the sea tosses itself and breaks itself, and should any sleeper fancying that he might find on the beach an answer to his doubts, a sharer of his solitude, throw off his bedclothes and go down by himself to walk on the sand, no image with semblance of serving and divine promptitude comes readily to hand, bringing the night to order and making the world reflect the compass of the soul. The hand dwindles in his hand, the voice bellows in his ear. Almost, it would appear that it is useless in such confusion to ask the night those questions as to what and why and wherefore, which tempt the sleeper from his bed to seek an answer. Mr. Ramsay, stumbling along a passage one dark morning, stretches his arms out. That leads to one of the big changes in this book. It is an incredible section that leads to this the fact that we have such a long description of all these things, and then an incredibly impactful thing for these characters is in a little section, just a little couple of sentences. And it's really heartbreaking, that. And the rest of the book then explores the changes in another kind of snapshot of time, the same as you had at the beginning, you have at the end. And it's incredible. It was really, really good. The more I think about To the Lighthouse, the more I enjoy it. Which is always a good sign. Grace recently read The Warm Hand of Ghosts by Katherine Arden, a 2024 release that I hadn't got to yet because Grace bought a copy very nicely for herself when I was still living in England, and so I never bought myself a copy. So when she read it, I had just finished To the Lighthouse or Rhythm of War, one of the two, and was like, I don't know what to read next. And she was like, you should read this. And what this is fantastic. First off, I gave it 4.25 stars, and it is World War One historical fantasy. Emphasis on historical and emphasis on gothic horror fantasy. We follow a character called Laura, who is from Canada, from Halifax, and she has been over in the war as a nurse, and has returned home. After returning home, there has been the Halifax explosion. It's this boat that exploded that destroyed much of Halifax, devastating the area. Laura's family is killed in that explosion, her parents, leaving her brother, who is fighting in the war, and Freddie. And essentially, it's a dual narrative from Freddie and Laura's perspective. Laura discovers that something could be happening with her brother. She believes he's dead, but then finds out that there could be the idea that he's still alive. And we follow Freddie as he is trapped inside of a pillbox. The shelter is trapped there, essentially, in no man's land kind of area. And it's hard to go into it too much, but essentially the thing I loved about this book so much is that the magic system is firstly very loose, very supernatural, very gothic. It is this exploration of it's this Faustus kind of gambit, with a Dracula-esque antagonist, like kind of creepy, vanishing, appearing, supernatural, give you your heart's desire, but then the Faustian kind of deal. All of these things come into it. So that's kind of the second half of the book, and that's where I really got pulled into it. For the first half, I was enjoying it, was waiting for the book to unravel itself, explain where it wanted to go. And when it pulls into that, it's this, the combination of those kind of ideas and themes with PTSD, this idea of the trauma that World War One sufferers went through, these soldiers and these nurses and the civilians and everyone went through. It was a time where the world completely changed in such a sad way, where people were dying for no real reason. One of the greatest wastes of life that's ever happened in history. And the book explores that really well. That's really all I have to say about it. It was really good. It's not my favourite of the year by any means, but it was a really solid book. And the ending did tie all of the themes together in a way that really worked for me. I think if the themes hadn't have nailed themselves so hard, it probably would have been like a 3.5. The central kind of idea tied itself together so well, and I really enjoyed the characters. They were incredibly compelling characters. There were a couple of predictable things, like some of the central tie-up to me wasn't a problem because as much as I guessed immediately what was going to happen, it was still told in a very compelling way. And finally, to begin my 2025 ARC reads, I've got a lot of books I'm interested in 2025, and as a result, I'm trying to get a head start a little. And so, concluding the Guardian of the Gods duology, which is a novella duology by Tobi Ogundiran, I read At the Font of Creation, which follows up In the Shadow of the Fall. I gave both of these 4 stars. I think they're incredibly solid novellas, and my main takeaway from this duology is that it kept its moral ambiguity right up until the end. It's a really wonderful, like, in terms of the shortness of the texts, it really plays with a lot of social dynamics, and there's a certain level of nuance where you discover things and you're like, oh, this is actually not, this is a kind of, what's the word? A kind of, a sect of this following which has turned into an entirely different thing, but is that person lying? Are they actually behind it all along? Do we even find out? Will we ever know? Are these good people? Are they bad people? Are the gods good? Are they bad? Are they inherently bad because they need to be? Do humans require this sense of sacrifice, or are they owed this sense of sacrifice? Um, if humans put in as much devotion as they can, but do not get any benefit, is there a point to the gods, etc.? There's a wonderful questioning and exploration around all of the different groups in this series. That I really enjoyed my reading experience. I think it's like, in terms of the ideas put forward, I am very interested in what he could do with a 400, 500 page book rather than 160. Um, because the level of nuance and everything you can get into would be fascinating. I'd love to see what he did with a much longer text. And that's my main takeaway, is that the main reason that I didn't give it any higher is because I do think there's a sense of things happen very quickly. It is cutthroat, it's very quick. You do have slow moments to be able to explore things, but a lot of the time things happen to get to the next thing, etc. And wherever you go, you know something climactic's going to happen because it's such a small book. Um, that I would love to have those longer scenes where not everything has to end with something. Um, but really solid. 4 out of 5 stars. Um, would look forward to reading whatever Ogundiran puts out next. That's it though. They are my reads. I'm going to try to put this on here so it looks as if it's part of the thumbnail. That it's not just a fucking thing. But I don't think it's going to work. Nevertheless, if you did enjoy, like I said, please do like, please do subscribe. Here is my stack. And as always, it's very dark. Look at that. It's dark as hell. But have a nice rest of your day.